control. Politicians and celebrities make deals behind closed doors, promises broken, and their income soars. Hidden agendas run the grand parade. In the circus, choose a masquerade. Believe me, I wouldn't lie. I've been given money, power, and fame to keep you in line.
Welcome, everyone. Today we will be talking about what the purpose of marriage is and exactly what is a traditional marriage. When people say, I want a traditional marriage, what are they even talking about? Because there's a lot of confusion online. A lot of people are saying that they want a traditional marriage, but they really do not know the history of marriage, the purpose of marriage, who marriage is for, who marriage is not for, and why do people even get married in the first place. So we're going to be talking about that today. This is going to be a pretty short one. I'm trying to do like under 30 minutes if I can, but it's a pretty interesting topic. So, and just as a side note, I was on a podcast the other day, and if anyone wants to see it, you can check it out. It is on at The Construct, and the title of the episode is Traditional Relationships in a Changing World. So it's a good episode. I think I did pretty decent for being interviewed. You know, I'm a little bit, I have what's it called? Sometimes I like fudge my words and stuff, but it was a pretty good episode, and you guys should check it out. La la la. Look at my face. I'm all weird. There I am. Anyways, so that is the episode. So go check that out whenever you guys have some time. And yeah, so happy Saturday, or actually it's Sunday. I don't even know what day it is. All right, guys. So let's get into it. What is the purpose of marriage? Why do we even do it? Do we have to do it? Should we do it? Who should do it if we should do it? Okay, so let's go. The root purpose of marriage. So let's go back anthropologically, right? The fundamental purpose of a marriage across cultures has been organized to regulate social, economic, and reproductive relationships. This is not romance. This is not love. This is not my fifis. This is not this person is hot. No. It has always been about social, economic, and reproductive control, right? That is it. All right. And it likely emerged around 6,000 to 4,000 years ago, right? Shifting from informal pairings, like we're all in tribes, whatever, everything is cool. Like we probably had way better lives. Everything was more chill. We were outside all the time. Life was probably great. And then some dumbass decided that we should go into more agriculture and raising animals. And then there we go. And then society got screwed up and everything went from like everything being kind of like great in tribes, in my opinion. We're all like, we have a lot of social connections. We don't really need that one person to be like our everything. It's ridiculous, to be honest. We don't have like the nuclear family, or it's not just your family name or whatever that you're trying to strengthen over centuries and stuff. But it was like the entire tribe. It was a collective of people working together to raise children, to have a good society. It was very nice, right? I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but like I'm imagining everything was chill. And if you believe in religion, yes, it was completely different, but whatever. Before agriculture and animal husbandry, right? That's what I'm talking about. It's a little different. We did have to be more nomadic, and we're moving around a lot. So, I mean, there's more stress, obviously, but not as much stress as modern life. I'll tell you that. Anyways, they were just informal pairings before, and now they became formalized pairings to control property, lineage, and inheritance. And then later on, there became like the spiritual and religious stuff like that came in. All right. It was also a way to secure your wealth, your class status, and economic ties, right? So in the ancient world, we're estimating like 2350 BCE, 500 CE, whatever. Marriage was more a social economic institution among the elites, right? To consolidate their power and their wealth. It was rarely about individual choice, rarely about affection. It was just focused on alliances, property, inheritance. That's it, right? So the earliest recorded marriages were contracts binding women to men to ensure biological heirs, property inheritance, and it was only done amongst the wealthy. Kings married off their daughters to forge political alliances. There was a bride price, which is the payment that the groom's family paid to the bride's family. That was common. And that was like compensating for the loss of the daughter's labor and ensuring her family's economic ties to the man's family, right? So this was all about securing alliances. And marriages among pharaohs and nobilities were very emphasized on bloodline purity, right? An inheritance of the throne and the lands. And wealthy men would purchase wives through gifts or payments provided to like the wife's families, right? So if you see a beautiful girl, you're a wealthy guy, you can pay her family and you can marry her, right? And they will allow it if you're very wealthy because they know you're going to be able to financially support her and her offspring, and it's a good match. There was no love. There was no need to try before you buy. There was none of this stuff. It was just pragmatic. You got this. I want this. Let's trade, whatever. Okay. And elites used marriages to kind of hoard and secure resources. And then you have in Greece, marriage was a tool for citizenship and property transfer. So now you have daughters given with dowries to wealthy suitors to elevate their family's status. Roman marriages linked to inheritance laws. Women with dowries had more rights, right? But unions were just economic pacts among the upper class to consolidate their estates. The bride price was less common, but fathers sometimes paid dowries to attract higher status grooms, reinforcing the class hierarchies. In India and China, all right, arranged marriages secured caste and inheritance. Dowries from fathers to groom ensured daughters married into wealthier families. In China, dowries empowered brides financially with patrilineal systems. But marriages were economic exchanges to preserve the family wealth and labor, right? That's it. That's all it is. I have not mentioned love yet, right? All right. And then you have, and many indigenous societies used a bride price to transfer wealth and labor rights. Marriages among the chiefs or the wealthy clans solidified economic dominance. So we're seeing a pattern throughout different cultures. Yeah, we're just seeing like this is what it's about, right? And then marriage started evolving with feudalism and colonialism. But it still remained very rooted in economics. But then you have like the addition of religion, right? So you have Christianity and Islam appearing now, right? So in medieval Europe, feudal lords arranged marriages for land and titles. Dowries were essential for noble daughters to buy into higher and higher classes. Inheritance laws favored their sons, but marriages secured alliances. Poor families rarely married formally. They would only marry in the church, right? And it was usually like, we're poor, your family's poor, we will align to help strategically help each other out of poverty. Because if you have two families aligned, now you have a better chance of securing wealth and getting out of poverty. More hands, more labor to get you out of poverty. In the Islamic world in Asia, cultures compensated brides or families, but among the elites, it was again tied to inheritance and property. In India, China, dowry systems intensified over time, with fathers paying to marry their daughters to wealthier men, which further again perpetuated the class divides, right? And the same thing was true in Africa and indigenous American cultures. Wealthy families use this to accumulate resources, even in tribal cultures. Think about that. So now we have the modern era. We're like about 1800 CE to present. So 19th, 20th century Europe and America's romantic love emerges. But arranged marriages still lingered among the elites and for wealth preservation. So dowries declined as women's rights increased, but economic compatibility, class matching remained key. So if you were this class, you had to marry within the same class. So that's why romantic marriages were okay, because yes, there is romantic marriages, but it has to be within your class. And that is also why the elite made sure that the other classes were not given access to their children, right? So they would have like special schools, special like events where like the children of one class could meet and then meet each other and then let them fall in love. But it's very strategically done. It's like you're not going to just go out walking around in society and find a husband or a wife. No. You are going to a place organized by the parents. The parents sit around, they watch the young children dancing and mingling with each other, and they kind of like they're just watching like who's gonna get with who. It's love, but it's like this is the pool of people you're allowed to fall in love with. So is it really I don't know, but it's still fun. And then they had like poetry and blah 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 started happening more, and drew up the handkerchief and all that stupid stuff. So that's when that started happening. Okay. Today, marriage increasingly focuses on emotional bonds and partnerships with still the legal recognition, right? But the roots of marriage have not changed, right? It's still wealth and class. And that's why we have prenups for inheritance protection, because still it's like if someone, like say like the guy is from a higher class than the woman doesn't have any money and he has all the money, he's going to make her sign a prenup. So like basically the prenup is like, you're lower than me, so you don't get anything if this doesn't work out. So if you want to take that risk to have the chance to raise your class, then you take that risk knowing if it doesn't work out, you go back where you came from. That's a prenup, basically. That's the mean and dirty reality of what a prenup is, unfortunately. Like, and if you are the wealthy person from the higher class, yeah, that makes total sense. You would want that. You're like, you're a lower class person. I'm marrying you just because you look good, basically. You look good. Or I'm taking a risk because you're nice or whatever stupid reason. But the reality is, I'm here. This is my class. And if you would like the chance to live as my class while we're together, you have to take that risk. Sign the dotted lines, right? So that's how it is. But then you see a lot of people who literally, they have no property. They have no status. They have no wealth. They have nothing. And then they're demanding prenups. Prenups are expensive, right? You have to have a lot to lose to be able to get a prenup. And you can't get a prenup based on future earnings, right? That's like, that doesn't work. It's whatever you make in the marriage is not what you had from your status, right? That is what you acquired together as a married couple. So that would be split. Even with a prenup, that's how it goes. You can make it other ways, but I think most of the states say, no, it's got to be like whatever you make together was not your previous status. Social class, status, social class, you know what it is. That's the reality of it, because the wealthy want to make sure that they have access to the beautiful lower class people, men and women, but that lower class person does not jump classes and take their wealth with them. It is what it is. Okay. Historical statistics, marriage rates. Okay. All right. So data from like early ancient to modern times has been very scattered, and it's usually only done with the elites because again, marriage was for the elites, right? So as far as the elites go, so like the classes that had property, about 80 to 90% would be married. And lower classes just had informal religious unions, right? All right, let's see. In most cultures, men were required to have land or income to wed, right? While women could marry up via the dowry. So if you have a daughter and you save up for your whole life and you make a good chunk of money, you can pay a wealthier man to marry her. And then she has the chance to go up in status, right? Let's see. The industrial area. Did I say area? The industrial era. Sorry. Now we have some more robust data on marriages, right? And men married, okay, let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Black women, this is interesting. Okay, from 1890 to 2010, Black women and men married at higher rates than whites. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Did you guys know about that? And this stopped at the 1960s and 1970s, where it shifted to like 70% of Black adults and 65% of whites were married. So it went from, okay, interesting. So they started to match the whites. That's cool. So, okay. And then, oh God, and then by the 1970s, 94.8% of white women and 92.2% of Black women married, compared to slightly lower rates for men due to the war, deaths, and economic barriers. So then you have Europe post World War II, which was the golden age, right? 1946, there was a rate of like 65% of women married, and then, oh my gosh, these statistics are a little crazy. I don't know how I'm going to say all this. But basically, it got up to about 95% of women and 85% of men by age 25, which is crazy. So that's like the golden age. I think that's like around the 60s, right? So 1946, when was 19? Okay. So that's 1960. It was about 95% of women and 85% of men. Okay. Oh, that's India. Sorry. So in America, it was still 65%. Okay. And then in India, it was 95% of women and 85% of men. That's crazy. So, like in India, they were marrying more than the United States. Okay. Weird. I did not know that. Did you guys know that? All right. Then by 2018, 46% of women were married, which was down from the 65% in the 60s. And let's see. 80% of women versus 75% of men by age 45 were married. All right. And it was pretty much similar across all the races in America. Then Asia and Africa, 85 to 90% of women were married versus 75 to 85% of men. Okay, so Asia and Africa, 85 to 90%, let's say 90% of women were married and 85% of men were married. So what the heck is happening? I guess they can marry multiple people, or there's some secret families. What's going on? What's going on over there? Okay. The age of marriage has risen. In the US, it's 28 and men 30. And this is like old data. It's higher now. So like first marriage for women is like, I think it's like 32 now. And for men, it could be like closer to 40 now. Because remember, it's tied to your economic status. Well, maybe feminism or whatever. I don't know. I'm looking at all over the globe. Do we have feminism in India? I have never been. Okay, let's see. Wealth requirements for men versus women in historical marriages. Okay. Men typically needed to demonstrate wealth or resources to afford a wife, while women were just valued for fertility and youth, right? So children and being young enough to have many children. That's pretty much it. Hot is a new thing. You didn't have to be hot back then. You just had to be young and female and fertile. Because I don't see any mentions of hot. All right. But you know what? I think guys find all young women hot, like all of them. All right. Okay, let's go. So let's go to romantic love as propaganda. What were the origins of romantic love and what's the purpose of this romantic love? It's an idealized, passionate bond central to marriage. That's what they told us, anyways. But it's completely a construct narrative rather than a human truth, right? It emerged as propaganda in the 12th century in Western Europe. It was invented by court poets in Provence, France, who romanticized courtly love in songs, often extramarital affairs, to entertain nobility and subtly reinforce social hierarchies. This invention spread via literature, right? Like the romances. This is when the romances started. And women got crazy with those romances, right? Portraying love as a noble pursuit, but it served to manipulate women into accepting, lesser status men, right? Okay. 18th, 19th centuries, the Enlightenment and Romantic era writers got amplified this obsessive romantic ideal. But then it became co-opted by the emerging capitalist society. So romantic love became propaganda to sell products. Valentine's Day was in the 19th century. So we got greeting card companies. And also when they wanted to sell mortgages and get you out of the farm and your family's communal land to move into the city so that you could be, work as like a laborer for the elites and corporations, they had to sell the nuclear family to people, right? So you're like going off on your own to start a family, right? Leaving the safety and security of your family. And we all know that groups do better at survival than single people, but we all got manipulated to leave our families and then go off on our own to make it alone by working for the company as a slave. During this industrialization process, it encouraged women to view marriage as emotional fulfillment rather than economic necessity, right? And this is basically a way to make an unequal partnership seem desirable, perpetuating like women to prioritize love and for men to prioritize love and all this junk, instead of just to realize that this is a container for children, right? Yes, I cannot speak English today. It's very difficult to speak English. I don't think what red thing. It's a light. All right. So this is my conspiracy theory on romantic love, right? I really feel like the elites and morality, they do not have morality like the lower classes have morality. And I think as more things are coming out about what they're really doing behind closed doors, like all the parties, all the swapping, all the poly, all the, like free love garbage that the elites are doing, it's starting to come to the surface. And this is what they did in a bunch of cultures when they had a lot of money. They would get together, they would have like this free love stuff. They were doing that. The poor people were, had a different morality. It was like, oh, you're an elite. You can afford to have multiple women or whatever and all that stuff. Well, I cannot afford that. Therefore, I now consider that immoral. And And like the lower classes had, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which says you cannot do all that stuff. I'm just like looking into a bunch of, I'm going to do a podcast just on that, because what I have found, basically, it's like the elites called it slave morality. And that was like what became the religious doctrines that the lower classes followed. Like they had to be, this and that, whatever. It's like, yeah, and the elites do like this weird stuff. Like when we we listen to like the Diddy stuff and all that, whatever, we're thinking like, oh, these people are weird. It was freaking all of them, you guys. It's all of them. They're all on the list, if you know what I mean. They're all on. They've been doing this. And when people mentioned a celebrity, they're like, oh, so and so got divorced and blah 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 blah. Even if you're rich and whatever, you still can't get your wife to be loyal. The wife was never loyal. The husband was never loyal. They don't have loyalty in certain classes. It doesn't exist. There's no morality. There's no loyalty. Everything is just like, it's just like a wealth agreement, right? So we kind of like, because we are not there, we kind of like try to superimpose our morality on them, but they do not claim that. I think they kind of toy with it, like they play with us as the lower classes, like, oh yeah, like I'm super, moral and jealous, and I was a virgin until like, I think this is all like theater for them, while they go and like bang each other in the background with these sick, weird, deviant, whatever they're doing. So I don't believe anything. If you come to me with an example of a celebrity that got cheated on, I'm never going to listen to you or take or like hear anything you say, because these people do not have morality like we do, right? It's very rare in the upper classes to have that. Now, there are some, right, historical classes that they had more morality, but I would say the very top elite classes, they do not do that. But then they have like this useful class, and this is kind of like the theater class, like the ones we know about. And I feel like they don't have morality. So the upper classes that are running things from the background have this puppet class of elites that they control them because they are so immoral. They're so easily to control. When you have no morality, I'm sorry, but you could be easily manipulated and controlled. They can catch you doing something, and now you are a slave to them, and now you will do what you were told forever, right? And as soon as they know like you have a sickness in you that they can exploit, they will. Now, I do believe the very, very top elites that run everything, like the few families that run it, I believe that they have morality, but it's a specific strategic morality because they have to strengthen their bonds to not let any other classes rise, right? That's just my theory, but what do we know? All right. Let's see. So in ancient Babylon, they had the Code of Hammurabi. Have you guys heard of that one? Dowries were a key mechanism for ensuring a daughter's security. Okay, and they would have bride price auctions where wealthier or more capable grooms could outbid others. Interesting. In ancient Greece and Rome, dowries were transferred to the grooms and often included lands and goods to cover marriage costs and secure the wife's position. Again, to buy matches. Everything is about purchasing matches. In Indian culture, right? In upper caste Hindu traditions, this is upper class. It's not like everybody, right? Dowries were prestigious and used to draw grooms from similar or even higher castes and wealth brackets, right? Families compete to offer larger dowries to secure alliances with prosperous men, right? Okay. So it's like I'm saying, okay. In imperial China, it was female inheritance, so they had dowries, and it included land or valuables. And it was, in this case, sequestered for just the bride's use. So it's like, here's all this stuff. And I guess it stayed with the bride as she got married. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. In medieval Renaissance Europe, dowries were universal, consisting of cash, furnishings, land, transferred to the groom's family. In England and Italy, they built political and economic alliances among nobility, aristocratic families, like, for example, the fifth Duke of Devonshire, provided enormous dowries to marry daughters into even wealthier or titled households. Now we have Mexico and colonial Mexico and New France, dowries often crown sponsored for poor women. Oh, okay. Still targeted soldiers or settlers with land or status, not the poor. Regency in Victorian England. As depicted in literature like Jane Austen's work, smaller dowries made women less marriageable to suitors, while larger ones attracted men of means. So, like, the thought that women are gold diggers, I think we're starting to realize it doesn't exist, because the whole point of marriage was status and money. It was, and the woman, I guess, just brought fertility. Okay, let's move on. So we've done ancient civilizations. It's the same in ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient China, other cultures, Mesopotamia, Greece, India. Like, we've gone through, it's everywhere. That's what it is. Islamic world, right? Okay. All right. Okay. 1800s in the modern era, right? Industrialization and social reform shifted the roles. But in wealthy households, you know how when people say, I want a traditional woman? Okay. Now we're talking modern times. Industrialization and social reform shifted roles. But in the wealthy households, they still had extensive staff, maids, nannies, butlers. So wives were their job, the wife's job in every single culture that I just mentioned. All of those cultures, actually, let's go through a few of them, right? In medieval Europe, what was the wife's job? Oversee servants' essential tasks. So the servants were doing the cooking, the brewing, the spinning, the weaving, livestock care, managing households of dozens, right? So they would manage. They were the CEOs of the house, right? They produced heirs. They guarded their heirs' virtue. So, like, a big part of the wife's job was to make sure that the children did not fornicate, right? Because they had to maintain their virtue, and they didn't want their sons to get people pregnant and their daughters to get impregnated, because either one would destroy a family, right? And their family's legacy, reputation. It would, like, if one brother impregnated someone out of wedlock, all the other brothers and sisters would not be marriageable. Like, it was a big deal. Okay. Moving on to Imperial China and Asia, wives supervise the servants, focusing on harmony in, like, whatever, and heir production. And again, piety, whatever, I don't know, filial piety. Somebody knows what filial piety means? I don't know. Okay. They directed domestic activities, advised in family matters, upheld the virtues like subservience with the servants, allowing emphasis on moral modeling and ritual observance. So it's basically the same thing. All right. It's like different ways of saying the same thing. Islamic world in India and elite families, the wives manage harems. They manage the harems. Overseed maids and concubines, ensuring education and marriages for the children, participating in cultural patronage. Servants handled the labor while the wives focused on societal alliances and religious duties. So basically, the job of the wife is to make sure everything is working well at home. The cook is cooking on time. The nursemaids are taking care of the kids. Like, everybody's doing their job. The kids are not able to impregnate or get impregnated by anyone who's not in a marriage alliance that's strategic for the family, right? That's the job of the wife, right? That's what wives are supposed to be doing. All right. And even in the modern era, I keep saying area, in the modern era, that is the exact same thing that wealthy women do. Yes, there's Well, we're having none of this. All right. They will all be deleted. That is part of my job. Anyways, so in the modern era, the wealthy wives still do the same thing. They make sure their children are going to be able to marry the right people, are around the right people, right? That are in the right schools so that they can be exposed to the right children of the right, the right parents, the right families. That all of that is what they do. They are not cooking, cleaning, child rearing. They are hiring people to do that. That is the woman's job. And I definitely think that the number one job of every single wife is to watch the freaking kids. Not like change their diapers and that. Like you can have a nurse do that. That's not the important part. It is watch the kids so they don't screw up their life and ruin their reputations. Reputation control is so important, especially now that everybody has such a poor reputation. If you can maintain your children's reputation and morality, they are going to be worth more in society, especially in such a degrading, decayed society like we live in modern times. Okay. So, yeah. Affluent wives, even the 20th century and now, they manage the staff, they host social events, they pursue philanthropy or education, and the global elites, they still do the supervision of the household, the nannies and maids, all of that persists to modern times. The wife's job is family legacy and networking and making sure those kids marry well. That's it. Number one priority. So in wealthy households, wives never did labor. They were just the overseers, and they just used their servants or, their hired staff and delegated tasks to them. Their priority is reproduction, social prestige, household governance, and that's it. Like that's their job, right? So let's define when people say traditional marriage. Now that we know what marriage is, right? This is marriage. Marriage is wealth, status, land, whatever. That's what marriage is based on. Okay, so what is traditional marriage? What is that required of men, right? You have to have wealth or property. So you need land, livestock, trade, inheritance, something to help support a household. The next one is status and stability in your social status. So let's say you didn't have property and land, but if you came from a good family, if your family name meant something, a wealthy woman who had money could marry someone who had status, and that would be considered an okay pairing. Income or earning potential. So now if you're like more lower status, like you don't come from money, you're not just managing money, you're actually working class, but like upper class working. Income and earning potential. So you were young, but you're on the trajectory to make a lot of money, then it would be okay for you to get married, because you still need to have a stable job or a business to cover the wedding costs, the housing costs, and to support a family. So that's a traditional marriage, right? And the age of the male's marriage usually correlates to the age where he can start finally being able to support a family, unless this short period of time that seems to be like the 60s, 70s, whatever, or 80s, 90s, like this is a very short period of time in history where we had the rise of the two-income household. And for this, it was generally people who were the same status. But then it started getting messed up because of the romance novels. So then it became people who were the same looks, which is crazy. But still, the majority of high status people still date only high status people. So when you look at the elites, they date each other, period. Even today, like the chances of you marrying like a very high status family, like, I don't know, like a Rockefeller or Kennedy, it's very, very hard for you to do. So because of the romance and because of hookup culture and because of, women being able to have money, so then they got the idea like that these things don't matter in a man, or like they just don't understand things because this is a very new thing in history. Women working and making about equal or even sometimes more than men is a very new thing in history. And this changed and destroyed all the dynamics that were in place. And yes, there were some bad things about before, like, if you married a bad guy, bad things, you would have a bad life, and that sucks. And you're kind of stuck there. Right. But now it's kind of like people are hooking up and having children without the marriage and the stability of that. And because we are leaving our families, once we leave our families, we also leave our family support. And now it's like every man for himself, every man and woman for him and herself. So now we have these kind of like lone wolves everywhere. And when you're alone in the world, like the women are alone and the men are alone, and they're trying to find someone to start a new family with, they are going to be already a little bit mentally off because they don't have a support system. When you leave home, you leave your support. And when you leave your support to try to do it on yourself, if you don't make it quickly, it affects you mentally, both of them. So they're all stressed out and they're affected by it. And then when they get together and there's no outside support, there's no childcare support. Remember, all throughout history, women who had children were higher class women who always had a nanny, a cook, all of the things. So they didn't have to do all those things. Their job was just to be cute, happy, watch the children so they don't mess around, keep the status of the family in check. That was their job. And now that they have to do like the lower laborious stuff, plus they have to work like a man, plus they have to be the nanny, plus they have to be the cook, plus they have to blah, 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 like all these things. It's too much for women, especially since, do you know, in ancient times, men were allowed, and this was the so-called slave class men, were allowed to take time off work if their wives had their periods, because they had to take care of them on their periods. And this, even my father told me, like in my grandfather, my great grandfather's time, like this was normal. Like if your wife has cramps or something and she can't do anything, she's not expected to cook or clean or look after the kids. The husband would take off work once a month and do those jobs while she was sick, so that she could recover. Because remember, there's a big blood loss. And what people understand as like PMS and like how bitchy and crazy and emotional, like in old times, they knew if you just sequestered the woman in a room and just brought her some teas and some soups to keep her womb warm and kept her in the dark for like a few days, it was better for the family. So they would do that to the woman. Like, you, honey, you just stay over there. And sometimes in some cultures, they actually said, you're going to go with other women to like this other mini village far away for a couple days. And we'll see you when you're done, honey. When, or like, I think in some cultures they said like women are unclean during this time. So they have to go to another room. Like there was a whole bunch of different cultural adaptations to kind of like take women who were PMSing away from the family so that they wouldn't stress out the children, stress out the husbands, because they weren't really useful at that time. And now we just give them the birth control pill and SSRIs or whatever, like, stuff that ruins. And yeah, and they're losing blood, they're losing iron, they're losing, and it's not a good thing. So because of that, send them away, right? And usually the women who were taking care of the children or whatever, they would be an older woman. So she's like menopausal. She's done with her children, whatever. And maybe she's a widow, so she can take care of the kids and the wife can go be away from everybody. And I remember in my father's family home, and this is like a huge estate, they would be like this little cottage. He told me like his mom would go there once a month for a few days because they couldn't stand her. Hilarious. And it's a beautiful little cottage too. So just like a picturesque place. She could just go be bitchy and cranky and then come back when she's done. Right. And I don't understand what it is, but like when I see someone when I am under this spell of like, the hormones, it's not good. And I don't want to medicate myself. I don't believe women should over medicate themselves. Definitely my dad's. Steve's family, not him, but his mom and his mom's father were very wealthy, but not his dad's side. That makes sense. Anyways, moving on. So, the later and later that people get married just correlates to the later and later people are able to afford a family. It is what it is. And women will continuously delay having children until they can afford a family. That's an innate thing. That's not a gold digger. That's just a survival mechanism. So now that it takes men longer, let's see. All right, let's see. So there were times in history where it was, in the 1700s, England, men married in their 30s, women by 26, right? That's kind of the same. And then in the 1600s in New England, men married at 26, women in their teens. So that means it was better financial times. You can tell by the age of the first marriage how good like the economy is for the average person when people get married. If it's 80-year-old men and 20-year-old women, we have reached peak income inequality. And that's going to happen if we don't do something about it. All right. So, in conclusion, okay, let's see. What did poor unmarried women do to survive if they didn't want to work at another family's home? So if you were a poor unmarried woman, let's say you hit 25, you are unmarried, whatever. What were you doing in the old times, in ancient civilizations? What did you do? So you could do informal home-based work. So many engaged in things like textile production, spinning wool, or weaving at home, which is the root of the term spinster, right? Spinning wool. Selling goods in markets, midwifery. In ancient Greece and Rome, poor women, they might brew ale, sell herbs, work as wet nurses independently. And so that was how they survived. This idea that women just started working recently is insane. Women have always worked. Wealthy women did not always work. This idea was just this feminism idea. All it did was make wealthy women, middle class and wealthier women, compete with middle class and wealthier men. That's the root of feminism. That's what real feminism did. It was just wealthy, bored, elite women who wanted to compete with the men in the man's domain. The other way that, let's say, women could get married is they could become religious, temple services, and every culture had a temple religious group you could join. And of course, the oldest profession in the world, lots of women did that, and they got a lot of status in many cultures for running things like brothels. Let's see. In medieval and early modern periods, women were probably more like maids in noble households. Some of them turned to the independent trades. And some of them just hookering. Is that the word? All right. And men, they went to war, they pillaged, they went out into the frontiers so that they can build their wealth on their own. Some of them, who were living in poor farmland, they went to the cities to get a trade or whatever, or they went to school and they could build up their status that way. And maybe they didn't want to get married after that. Some of them just did intellectual pursuits. And that was it. And that was enough for a lot of people. A lot of people, they got older, they had a lot of wealth, and they're like, you know what? I think I'm good. I'm kind of set in my ways. and they would just go to the brothels. Let's be real. Most dudes, if if they made their money later in life, they would just be like, you know what? I've seen what's out there, and I think would just like to go to the brothels, cut and dry. Maybe you get your favorite girl at the brothel and you keep going to her. But ultimately, it is what it is. It's not always for everyone. All right. And right now, 2025, it's not looking good, right? Men are probably going to have to be more like 45 to 55 before they make enough to make a family, unless they figure something out that's crazy. So that's why you see a lot of dudes that, like, instead of going to the brothels, like, they're too lazy to go to a brothel, which is crazy. We need to have brothels here, because if you got like a lot of single dudes that can't afford to have kids yet, they should be able to go to a brothel. At least, it's not like, I don't know. Do you think it's better, the brothel or the OnlyFans? Because virtually you don't transfer disease, so that's good. But then the brothel, you can transfer disease. But then you also have a relationship. You can pick your like favorite girl. I don't know. But ultimately, I think for most chicks, they're probably going to end up as side chicks, right? And most dudes, if the economy doesn't get better, or if we don't move to another country, I think. So most chicks are going to be side chicks, if anything, or they're just going to be single moms. And they'll have their businesses, because like I think it's easier for women to make money if they want to. Or, there's always government assistance, I guess. And then for men, there's the OF. Maybe we could get some brothels here until they're old enough. And then when you guys around 45, 55, then you'll have enough money. You can go to the brothels, or you can go and marry a 20-year-old. Maybe your wife isn't even born yet, guys. She might not even be born. And that's the reality of marriage. No such thing as a gold digger. It is what it is. And the marriage rates correlate with the cost of being able to afford a family. That's it. That's all it is. You can always go the religious route. That is always available. I like that. I like the scholarly route, like become like a priest or a monk or something like that. Like, that's a great thing. But I also am realistic. There's a lot of people who can't do that because maybe they got some demons in them that don't let them. And they're too weak to fight them. And that way, do what you want, guys. But these are the facts about marriage. This is where it came from. Inheritance, legitimate offspring, property and labor transform, alliances between families or groups, maintain social stability, structuring kinship and resource distribution. That's it. That's marriage. That's the purpose. So when someone says traditional marriage is literally just two families deciding, can you support my kid? Will your kid give my kid good heirs? That's traditional marriage. And that's it. So we'll always have our romance novels. But remember, they're a complete lie. There's no romance. Okay, this is my conspiracy theory about romance novels too. I think I was going to say this and I got sidetracked, right? So romance novels, I believe they were meant to fry women's brains so that they date poor, lower status men, right? Or they get impregnated by lower status men and they give up being with a stable, wealthy, good provider man. Because that's every romance. Think about like Titanic. She's married. Her mother's like, this will secure your future. He's a good match. He's a good man. And then she's like, no, I want this broke guy. I want to have premarital, unprotected sex with a broke guy. And this is the fantasy that women say. Or what about The Notebook? The Notebook always irked me because The Notebook is, oh, you were married to a successful whatever, you're engaged to a successful good guy that treats you great. Blow him off for the broke guy that you keep fighting with because it's exciting. Because like literally, like the relationship was them fighting, but it's exciting. So I think it was so that women would not try to go above their station. I think it was like the elites propagating it to make sure that women kept dating lower and lower so that they would be a greater gap between the wealthy and the poor. Now that's just my conspiracy theory. Yeah. And then you have like a lot of this weird, like this newer propaganda from like television and stuff, like the step family propaganda. Like just let some stranger around your children. That's not going to be a problem. It'll be like the Brady Bunch. What a happy family. That always made me feel uncomfortable. Like you're going to have a strange man living in the house with your young daughters. That's insane. But here we go. Because they know if they propagate the propaganda of the step family, the step parent, whatever, letting them around the kid, what the dad that's stepped up or some garbage, that's going to tell women, if you don't like the father of your children, just get the other guy. That guy's going to be even better. And the reality is the other guy is more likely to harm your children. But what are you going to do? The propaganda is thick, which is another reason why mothers need to focus on what their children are doing, who they're talking to. And that's another reason why I remember growing up, because I'm very ancient. So in my ancient times, it was a big deal. Like if your parents were still together, if they were divorced, less people wanted to date you. Now it's like everybody's divorced. So there's like, this doesn't even come up anymore. Everybody's like, what's it called? Like cut off their family. So it's just a bunch of lone wolves, and lone wolves are loose cannons, but we're all loose cannons now. So it's going to be a lot harder to like bring society back together. You need to make family strong again in order to get society back on track. Anyways, that's my rant for today. Let me know in the comments what you think a traditional marriage means now that you know the history of marriage. And there's no more shall I hear she's a gold digger or he's a gold digger or whatever, because that's what marriage is. It's literally resources. All right. So guys, thank you all for hanging out. And I will see you next time. Like, subscribe, comment, share. And I think I got monetized. So I know there's a lot. Everybody's a predator, guys. Yes, marriage is a merger. Think of it like two corporations merging. Anyways, so hope you guys have a lovely day. And remember, maybe your wife isn't born yet. So just keep hustling because you got tons of time. See you all next time. Bye.
The old gods whisper with tongues of sin. They crawl through culture to pull you in. Don't be for sale, don't wear their grin. The old are rotten, don't let them win. Eyes and nights and mirrored glass. They promised youth, they cursed your past. You drank the lie with ruby lips, but every toast is one